Chairman and honorable members of this August House. My name is Mr. Wicknell Chivhayo. I'm the Managing Director and Shareholder of Zimbabwe Private Limited.
You know that when you come to Parliament, you must have a tie and a jacket.
My apologies, I was not one.
Now, I'll certainly accept it today because it's really taken us a while to have you here, so we'd rather have you here than to ask you to go home and be properly dressed. So we will entertain your escort. The answer is back.
Trying just briefing, oral evidence. Just want to hear from him. It's not a court that is under trial. So really, there's no need for him to be defended by the lawyers. What would they want to defend? We are not going to raise charges against it.
I think I hear you. Why don't you allow the proceedings to go on? If the lawyers come in, then you bring a stop of order. They say the lawyers represented shareholders. He is one shareholder and there are many others. So let us allow the process to go on. At any time, if you think that they are defending him, then you raise the red flag. Let us allow the process to continue.
Honorable Chairman, for the record, I didn't invite them. They came on their own accord. I just met them outside. I came alone.
Precisely why they are here, they represent other shareholders of Intratech, and as a result, they are here to do that. So allow the process to go on. I told you they are representing other shareholders. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, Mr. Chairman. In actual fact, who invited the lawyers to Parliament?
The lawyers came through, they said Mr. Chivhayo was being invited as Intratech. They introduced themselves to who they are. It's an Intratech issue, Intratech are the shareholders.
But Chairman,
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God.
To this committee, afternoon one of meeting you here, and let me congratulate you on your son. We did, your baby, we did get a note that you were seeing the birth of your son, which is important, as Parliament will respect that. We are not here on any chanting escapade as members of Parliament. We are exercising our role of oversight. And I think we are equally here to also take on any challenges that you might have in the process. We are here to hear from you on the issues which we were written about. First of all, the detailed explanation of the tender awarded to you for the Zimbabwe Power Company for the National Solar Project, including the payment processes and the method of transactions and the progress to date. I think these are the three key issues that we want to ask. But before we go into that, who is Intratech? And in saying who Intratech is, can you also break down the shareholding and the names of the shareholders? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Intratech Zimbabwe is owned by.
Point of order.
My point of order is we have got ZESA management, ZDTDC people actually in the balcony. Are they supposed to be here? Same. What's the interest? It's conflict of interest. Maybe intimidation.
I think what we must ask ourselves as members of Parliament is that what are those galleries for and for who?
yes.
We must be very clear on that and not start other groups. Those galleries will not group anyone. What are they for? The people who come in to listen. They don't participate, they just listen. So what harm can they be in listening? Unless somebody in the gallery participates, and there's a conflict
Through your honorable chair, these are not the ordinary public. We have come just to watch or see what is in the parliament. These are people who have been invited to also come to this parliament, this committee, and speaker in honor of their evidence. And actually, some are connected to the issue that we're discussing here now.
Yeah, that's the issue.
These are not just ordinary public.
I think members of parliament must solve and say to ourselves what damage. I think I'm the chair. I think we want to continue. What harm will they do by me sitting there and listening? I need you to guide me on that because there's no written issue on who comes to sit in the Yes, Honorable Tenants.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, in 1940, in short, in 1940, now in the family, right out in Garano, as an ambassador Simon, Noguti, even it has to our mercy, whoever was down, they take us. Kevin and me, study. And at the same time, the Gatana now we are subsidized most as to the Gattis and to that chopper. So, even I was the chopper. I don't think it is any problem.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Intertrade Zimbabwe is a local company that I formed in 2012, and shareholders are Mr. Chivhayo, myself, who I own 50%, and my partner, Mr. Yusuf Ahmed, who is also owns a company called Intermediary Investments, so he's also a 50% shareholder.
You may proceed. You may proceed with the reason why you are here. The first question is, can you give us a detailed explanation of the tender awarded to you by ZPC?
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, just as a point of correction, the tender was awarded to me by the State Procurement Board and not particularly by ZPC. In 2012 towards 2018, ZPC advertised a tender in all newspapers. They advertised the tender for 100 megawatt solar farm in, they called it Gwanda Plum Tree Solar Farm. As they advertised the tenders in the newspapers, as I bought the newspapers, I went to ZPC to buy a document. The document was $10. After buying the tender document, I had a lot of interest in the project because I had various technical partners world over who I thought I could partner with and participate in the project. So after buying the document, we attended a pre-bid conference. This pre-bid conference was well attended by maybe over 70 companies, where they outlined to us how they intend to implement the project and where they want the project to be and certain guidelines that were required. I traveled to, after this pre-bid conference, I traveled to Germany, where I met various companies that are involved in solar energy. One was Greenfield Solar Energy, and then the other one was Freytech, and I had discussions with them. Upon having discussions with them, we agreed on certain criteria we would use to participate and prepare a bid for the tender. After all those agreements, I came back to Zimbabwe and subsequently went to China as well. I went to China, I met a company called Chint Electric. The company has assets with over 30 billion, annual turnover of average of $12 billion. I also presented my case to them that there's a tender in Zimbabwe for a 100 megawatt solar farm, and considering that your profile says it all, you have installed over 3,000 megawatts in solar worldwide. I'm interested in working with you. They were also very interested and said, well, I managed to present myself well, and They thought I was an ideal partner for them in Zimbabwe, and they said they agreed. We also signed contracts. So I had 2 technical partners, Greenfield Solar and Chint. So I had a choice. I was put for a choice of 2. I came back to Zimbabwe and we started preparing the bid. Sometime in 2013, I decided to submit the bid with the German company Greenfield Solar. We submitted the bid. After submitting the bid, we were beaten by, after submitting the bid, the tender closed, adjudication went on. Came the award time, we were beaten by a company called China Jiangxi for International Corporation. Their price was around 184 million. So after the award, I then went to the erstwhile minister, who was Minister Chivhayo, and I explained to him that in the beginning, the whole solar project was my brainchild. I brought Germans to do a quick feasibility. Minister Mangoma had referred me to Rwanda, where he thought was most probably the best place we could get the best sunshine. And I thought it was unfair that I would then lose out to another company. Then he said, okay, we understand this was your brainchild. You're the one who brought this project to us. So in the interest of local companies, I will then present before cabinet that 3 companies be awarded, since we have a deficit of over 1,500 megawatts. Mr. Chivhayo went to cabinet and cabinet agreed to say no, the more the better, for as long as these other bidders who are compliant are willing to meet the same price that China Jiangxi was awarded at. Then submissions were made to State Procurement Board, and the erstwhile late Chairman Charles Kwaza then responded positively and said, yes indeed, this is a national security issue. We have to award 2 other companies. Then we were awarded Introtrack Zimbabwe and ZTE. So at that stage, there were 3 companies that were awarded for the 100 megawatts. That was early 2013, if I'm not mistaken. As we proceeded, we had contract negotiations. China Jiangxi also came up with different proposals to try and increase their price. They were not happy why 2 other bidders were awarded when it was them who was the cheapest. Then some controversy was created, and China Jiangxi also tried to increase their price. And since our price was higher than them, we had reduced our price. Then that violated tender procedures, the lowest bidder to specification principle. And ultimately, the State Procurement Board figured out that this was going to be a mess, and they cancelled everything. So they cancelled all 3 bids and said the tenders have been cancelled. But out of the 6 bidders, we will give you a chance to resubmit your tenders. Then it was advertised again. Basing on the prices that I had got from the Germans, I decided to switch back to the Chinese partners who I had visited. So it was time to submit new bids. I went to the Chinese, we sat down, we agreed, and we prepared a bid. We prepared our bid, we submitted the bid on the closing day, and adjudication started. The adjudication started, and
Sorry, just before you proceed, I want to understand, is it in your words that when you failed to get the first, when the tender was awarded to the other company, you went to cabinet minister?
yes,
To appeal?
yes.
Were you the only one who did not get that tender, or there were other companies?
There were 6 companies that participated. 3 were non-compliant. Non-compliant in the sense that they didn't meet the criteria for funding or the technical specification. But the other 3, including us, were compliant.
So did the other company to go to the minister to complain why they did not get the tender, or it was your company? I just want to
Well, I'm not sure. I can't.
Not sure.
Yeah, but it was ZTE. I'm not sure if they did.
Thank you.
So after that, I was talking about the new submission. We submitted a new bid with Chint. Adjudication started. Some
Started?
Mr. Honorable Member.
Honorable Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarity's sake, Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Chivhayo can avail to this house, when he went through this tender thing, he finished the state procurement board with regard to the issue of having a criminal record. Did he put it to that he went through that before? I think it's part of a condition.
I think what I will do is it is the first question that you asked after his presentation. It was certainly the list. Okay, may you proceed.
So should I answer the question? Or
No,
should
you answer it later. Proceed.
Okay. So we then submitted a new bid with Chint Electric at a cost of 173 million. Adjudication commenced, and obviously the processes take time until we had a few other challenges, problems with the pricing envelope, delivery duty paid. It was a long process. It had been, one envelope was cancelled. We had to put in new envelopes, but eventually in 2015 we were then awarded as the lowest bidder to specification for the Gwanda 100 megawatt solar farm. In other words, we won as the cheapest at the Gwanda solar farm. Then the other company, ZTE, won at Bulawayo Sukamini. Then the other company, Metallurgical MCC 17, won at Munyati. So there's the 300 megawatts solar farms. Soon after winning, in terms of the state procurement board laws, the contract should be signed within 30 days or 45 days. We then started contract negotiations. We negotiated our contracts with our lawyers. Chint Electric came through. After negotiating the contract in October, on the 20th in 2015, we then signed the 100 megawatt solar farm. After signing the contract, as part of the contract, ideally you negotiate the contract how you want, and it's a question of one company can have a completely different contract with the other company because it's based on how you negotiate. So during our negotiations, I had negotiated for pre-commencement works, but they were not prerequisite or mandatory. We just agreed that we may have pre-commencement works as the project proceeds. After the contract was signed, we needed a feasibility, a bankable feasibility, which the banks obviously require before they can even look at the funding of any project. They want to know if the project is feasible. So I engaged a company from China, obviously because I had Chinese partners. I thought a feasibility from a Chinese company would be much better. So I engaged a company called Shanghai Electric Power Design Institute, which is the biggest and the best in the Shanghai area, and as well Chint is also in Shanghai, and we were also going to go and present our loan application based on the Shanghai China Exim branch. So everything would have worked out easier if it's done in Shanghai. So Shanghai Electric Power Design Institute came through to Zimbabwe. They went and stayed at the site for about 3 weeks, had all their small solar panels and equipment to test the feasibility to see if indeed the sun from Zimbabwe can generate energy that can go into the national grid. They did all their tests and they went back to Shanghai. As soon as they got to Shanghai, they prepared their comprehensive document, which is the feasibility study, which they then presented to me and said, Mr. Chivhayo, we finished the feasibility. That's obviously the first step because there was no feasibility. We're just going to tender without a feasibility. So when I got the feasibility, in terms of the contract, as part of the pre-commencement works, the feasibility was there at a cost of 2.1 million. And then we had agreed that the pre-commencement works would limit them to $4 million. And we had agreed that we would do $1 million a month, and we outlined the works that would classify under the pre-commencement works. The basis of doing this was we just wanted to have some sort of activity to say, take for instance, we have the feasibility. If any of the financiers for the local portion, if China Exim was going to put 85%, if any of the financiers for the local portion would visit the site, at least they could see that the land is cleared, they could see that the land is registered in ZPC.
I think what I'll do right now, I think this is into 3 parts. There's the tender process. I think you've explained that. And with your indulgence, members of Parliament, I'll probably invite questions for the tender. If there are any questions that you have on that, then we'll then go to the next segment, which should be the payment processes, and then thereafter the work, the kind of progress right now. I want to break it down in that. So I'll then invite members of Parliament if there are any questions relating to the tender process. That is just as the Honourable Chairman, you had raised that issue. I'll give you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question to Mr. Chivhayo, through you, Mr. Chairman, is to do with the processes that you had to go through as a result of requirements of the State Procurement Board. Is it on record that when you went there, he actually went against the rules which are supposed to be applied with regard to him having been referred as a person with a criminal record? Is it official that he has a criminal record?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you for your question. First of all, when you participate in a tender, there is no clause that specifies or outlines issues of business people with previous convictions. A previous conviction does not mean you cannot go about with your life and participate in business. The evaluation criteria does not define issues related to previous convictions. So at no stage were we ever asked or told that if you want to participate in this tender, make sure you have never gone to jail. There was never anything like that.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Can you put it on record to this House that when you went through the tender procedures before then, did he had any criminal record? If ever he did, can you finish it to the House as to what it was?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's common knowledge. I was convicted of confiscation of profits, money laundering in 2005, and I served 24 months. I filed for an appeal in the Supreme Court, which is still pending and has not been concluded.
Honourable Chirisa.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to find out from you, Mr. Chivhayo, when you went to meet with the would-be partners in Germany and China, what were you putting on the table? How much were you contributing towards this project? So, what was the reason for you to go back to a cabinet minister to complain, I will use the word complain, that you did not get the tender? And how much money changed the heads for you to then be considered by the then Minister Mafai?
I think the question is pertinent in that as much as you responded, well, you're saying the requirements of the tender application does not require you to state Chivhayo's convictions. The same question applies that when you fail to win a tender, does the tender requirements say that you must go and see a Minister of Energy, yet it's a state procurement board?
Thank you for that clarity, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Honorable Member, for the question. When I went to Germany and China to see the partners, all I was offering them was that I'm a local and it is encouraged that projects of this magnitude should have participation of local people, and that if we participated as a local company, we had a 10% preference on the price, that the Procurement Act gives an advantage to local companies for 10% in price variation. And then your second question, that how much money exchanged hands. Honorable Member, there was no money whatsoever that exchanged hands. But in terms of the tender, the State Procurement Board laws, if you have any queries within a stipulated time, you can then go to court and appeal. But my approach was different, because my approach was that we have a deficit of 1,500 megawatts. What is the whole, if there are 3 companies that are all compliant, that are all reputable, that can execute the work, why award one if we can have 300 megawatts as opposed to 100?
I think, Mr. Chivhayo, it's the state procurement board.
Yes.
State procurement.
How much speak?
No, you're saying if there are 3 good companies.
I'm saying that was my reasoning when I went to the minister.
But you are equally saying that failure to which you can go to court. The question still remains, is Mr. Mavai in court?
That was my next question.
I think we don't understand each other. When I went to the minister, this was my approach as an individual, because I needed his opinion. So I went to him and I presented my case. I said, I have no basis to appeal because this company has won as the lowest bidder to specification. But in my view, I wrote a letter to the Chief Secretary, I wrote a letter to the Minister, I wrote various letters complaining, which I can dig out and furnish to the Parliament if you so wish. And I said, in my view, I feel all companies, including a Zimbabwean company, should have been awarded because we have a deficit. They are the power cuts are so much, we have constant power cuts. What is the point? This whole process has taken 2.5 years. To float another tender will take another 3 years, and we have this deficit. Why can't these 3 companies be awarded because they are compliant?
Hold on. Thank you, Chairperson. The correct route was the court route, but you decided to take a shortcut. Why? What I'm not understanding, Mr. Chivhayo, you know very well that you had a complaint to make and you know the right way to do it. Why did you take a shortcut and go straight to the minister and not to the courts? Thank you.
Just to add, so that you respond.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if ever you can clarify to this House, when you went to see the minister through, in what capacity would you go to see the minister? And at whose advice? How do you do that? The connection, so that you get to the attention of getting to the minister. Bearing in mind he was a member where the panel which was supposed to go through the SPB. What powers did you use anyway?
I think the State Procurement Board is under the Ministry of Finance. It's not under the Ministry of Energy. So the members of Parliament are asking that if you have issues with the Parliament, the responsible ministry is finance and not energy. So why then did you leave out following the due process laid of approaching the courts if you are not happy? Secondly, going to the minister who presides over the State Procurement Board and say what was done was unfair because A, B, C, D. But then you decided to then go to the Minister of Energy, who's not responsible for the State Procurement Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Point of correction, the State Procurement Board does not fall under the Ministry of Finance. It falls under OPC, Office of the President. This is why I wrote a letter to the Chief Secretary.
Can I say this? Can I correct you?
Yes. No, not at all. No. I think on that I'm well aware. Take my word for that.
Chairman.
Then it did fall under
No.
Okay, then proceed.
So I had to see everybody who I felt could assist. So in this instance, the Minister of Energy wanted more power. That was his mandate. He wanted as much power as possible. So I went and I presented my case to him. I went and I saw the chairman of the State Procurement Board, Mr. Charles Kwaza, and I also explained my story to him. I also wrote a letter to the Chief Secretary, and I also explained my story to him. So I was trying to present my story to all the people who I thought were important or relevant to this and could give me the support I needed. Chairman. But I think, Honorable Chairman.
Just,
Chairman.
Honorable Chairman, come in.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Mr. Chivhayo, can you explain whether you won this tender because of merit? Why am I asking that? Did you done this kind of project anyway before you was awarded this tender? And what was the value of your balance sheet? Because you're just telling us after you won the tender, then you started to visit all sorts of companies in different countries to try and come in. All I was trying to use was the advantage that you are a local, you belong to Zimbabwe. And I don't think that those are the good reasons which could make you want that tender. Just to say, because I'm just like you in Zimbabwe, you are given 10% in your reprieve because you're a local. If anyone can do that, and you've done this kind of a project before, which you could probably refer to the board to say, I've done this kind of project in this country, or I successfully do it, and I can do it. Did your company ever did that before?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll come to you. There's a follow-up. Let me finish this and come to the next.
Yes.
Mr. Chivhayo, I hope you're taking into these questions because they are coming.
Okay. I have to write the questions down.
You need that. Okay, let's take note. The questions are really coming in.
So it's a bit hazy, or it's a bit difficult for us to understand that within a year, after he forming a company, without any experience at all, then he was awarded the contract. So it's just a follow-up to what for you to explain under what circumstances that within just a year, without even any experience at all, after forming a company, awarded the contract.
Just to get to Honorable Megan, was the company meant for that particular tender that you are awarded to? Was you opened the company in 2012, then in 2013, in a few months you were given a tender. Was it meant to be specific for that tender?
Honorable Chairman.
I just want to sound out if maybe merit in this case could have been flowing from the gentleman's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first question I want to respond to in the order. My apologies, I didn't get all your names, but I'll just call you honorable member. The question was that did you win the tender on merit or you just used your influence as a local? I won the tender on merit because I had partners who have assets worth over 30 billion and a turnover of between 10 and 12 billion every year. This is why I was awarded. It was not about me, the local. It's about the company that's going to come and install. You asked, have you ever done projects of this magnitude? It was not about me, it was about Chint Electric. Chint Electric has done over 4,000 megawatts in solar farms right around the world, including China and more than 56 countries. So the credibility was all about them and not the local company. This was a requirement in the tender document. And you seem to have missed my explanation. I did not say I traveled to see the partners after winning the tender. No. I went to see the partners first. Then we agreed to put a bid together with their balance sheets, with their profiles, because the tender document is not just 5 pages. It's more than 1,000, 2,000 pages explaining how you're going to put the solar farm, which is then marked. And then they say, yes, this explanation is correct. These people can do it. So Chint did everything. All I required was my certificate of incorporation and who are our directors and a few things from the local company. But the whole submission was based on Chint Electric's credibility, balance sheet, and experience. Can I just answer the questions right now?
I think, like what Mr. Giva just said, so can we safely say his company, Intertrek, was just a briefcase company?
Yes.
Can he admit that? Because from what he said to us now, the major company was Shanti, whatever he's calling it. Intertrek was just a briefcase company. Intertrek had no experience, it had nothing to do with what was supposed to be done. So the whole idea was Intertrek was just deformed, actually Intertrek specifically, just as it being a briefcase company. Can you just verify?
I think that question is asked by Honorable Chair. I think that you respond to that.
Through your chair. My follow-up question before you.
Thank you for your question, Honorable Member, but this is normal practice. This is how tenders are participated. We have a local company that works with an international partner. There is no abuse whatsoever of being a local.
Honorable members, I think you have the power to invite the State Procurement Board, and I think some of these questions are directed to the State Procurement Board in terms of what criteria do they use in making cabinets. We shall call the State Procurement Board to also respond to this. I think some questions are for the State Procurement Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just continue. His other question was that, are you related to the former First family? And was there any assistance for them to win? I'm not related to the former First family, and at no given time did they interfere or assist me. Tenders are awarded by the State Procurement Board. The First family does not and have no influence whatsoever, in my respective view, to the operations at State Procurement Board.
Mr. Chivhayo, you are prevaricating. Let me warn you. You say tenders are for the State Procurement Board. The question which you have not answered, you went to the Minister of Energy. And you still have not answered that question. You cannot answer questions as and when you feel like answering them. The real issue which is sticking is how the tender was won. You went through the process, you lost. You went to the minister. The minister went to cabinet. And it's not a secret that the former president was no longer in control of this country. That's the reason why Parliament impeached him. He said the first lady was de facto. So the honorable member is going to let
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this August House is mixing up the tender that I eventually signed. It was not the same one that I'm saying was cancelled and then I went to the minister. After it was cancelled, it was then cancelled again after we failed to agree. I thought I explained that. So I'm not saying...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
This one was lowest bidder to specification, no minister code. And Minister Mavaye was 2013. This was now Minister Undenge when we signed. So you're mixing up, and then you are saying you went and you saw a cabinet minister after having lunch. Lunch was 2015 in Dubai, and then Minister Mavera was 2013, so they're completely different. You're just adding up something.
I think it is important that you understand that where there is clarity. I think this is emanating from the first tender, which you lost, if we had correctly.
Yes.
You lost it, and you went to the minister. Are they right or wrong in saying that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. So, to me, this is where it's all starting from. That you lost the tender, you went to the minister and said you're a son of the soil, why are you not giving the tender? Yes, there is a process which should be used in appealing if you're not happy. And you very well say there is a court process. And members of parliament are still asking, if there is a court process, why did you not follow the court process?
Litigation is always...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm saying Minister Mavaya was 2013, Minister Ondege was there in 2015. So when they say you had the lunch in Dubai and then you came back to the minister who influenced the cabinet, they're completely different events with different timelines. That's what I was trying to get at.
The first issue which you need
okay, can I rather...
No, because we now need to be on track. The first issue which we've dealt with is how you won the tender.
Yes.
We are on that.
Yes.
And the members of the committee are asking that if the first time you said you lost, it's you who said it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I continue to answer the other questions I wrote down, I'll just respond to that. There were 3 companies that were compliant. Compliant in simple terms that they had passed the funding and technical specification. So ZTE, Introtrack, and the one that has been awarded number 1. So the request was, since there are 3 companies that are both compliant on funding and technical, why can you not award the compliant companies, because they are able to do the work and they have the experience? So the other 3 had no chance because they were non-compliant. So the 3 that were compliant were then awarded. So whether ZTE went to the minister or also tried to lobby, I won't comment for them. But I went to the minister because litigation is always the last resort. So I went to the minister, I wrote to the chief secretary, I wrote a letter to State Procurement Board Chairman Kwaza, and we went there, we saw him and we explained to him. And he also understood. He said, yes, I'll consult my principals because what you are saying makes a lot of sense. The deficit is 1,500 megawatts. What reason do we have not to award other compliant companies as long as they are willing to match the price of the lowest bidder that we awarded? So it was a question of, I was trying my luck. I wasn't just going to give up after putting a lot of effort. I had spent outrageous amounts of money putting together the bid, going to China, going to Germany, teaming up with partners. So on the issue of due process, because I then wrote letters right to the minister, to the State Procurement Board, and to the Chief Secretary saying I was going to try and go to court, but once I go to court, it would then stop the one who has been awarded until my determination of my legal battle. So in the interest of everybody's time, what was the basis? If I go to court...
I don't know, are you aware that we are now getting the Chief Secretary to come here to this committee and respond? So we're taking note of all this. So the Chief Secretary can now work outside the State Procurement Board. So the question is, what is the purpose of the State Procurement Board? If we have executives interfering, and the whole point of the State Procurement Board is for fairness. But if you're now naming these people, clearly illustrates there was undue influence.
I wrote letters to the Chief Secretary, and the response came signed by the Deputy Chief. Must have been the one who was in charge of Zimbabwean cluster. But I've got all the responses, and if this House would like to see them and the letters I wrote to make a follow-up, that is very possible. So
in summary, what did
the Chief Secretary said that we confirmed receipt of it copied State Procurement Board. We are in receipt of your letter talking about power, and we recommend that wherever necessary and possible, the country needs more power to ameliorate the energy shortages that the country is facing. Please find a way to resolve this without having to delay national projects. That was it.
So the chief secretary to the president cabinet.
The deputy chief is the one who then responded. Was the Chinese Sima said.
Can we get the letters you wrote in?
I'm not related to them. And the next question says you formed Intertrek in 2012. A year later, I signed a contract with a year experience. It was not about Intertrek. Based on experience.
Which experience? You just responded to the question of what qualifications do you want. You have no qualifications. That's fine. You responded. You may proceed.
You formed this company in 2012, and a year later you signed a contract without experience. The experience that was looked at and the evaluation criteria was Chint Electric and not me. So the issues of the local company were neither here nor there. They were not important. What they wanted was an EPC contractor who can install a 100 megawatt solar farm, and Chint Electric was the ideal. Was this company registered for this tender only? I registered a company and decided to venture into power generation and participate in tenders. So I participated in other tenders that we also won, some a lot that we lost.
So in terms of the tenders which you participated in?
It says, was the quality compromised because you had quoted 250, but now your second bid you submitted 174. This is the reason why I left the European partners and chose the Chinese, because the Chinese were a much bigger company and were willing to give a better price. So the second submission with Chint, the first submission was with Greenfield Solar Europa, and then the second submission was with Chint Electric China. So they gave me a better price, which is why I put 174 million. I hope that, so no quality was compromised. It was still a big company, just in fact much better than the Germans.
Follow. Chairman. Follow. Thank you. That was my question. I think, Honorable Chair, the man is under oath. If we know it takes 50 liters to get to Blawayo, and then a man comes back and says, I will now use 30 liters. Quality was compromised. You must just accept it.
Point well noted.
Chairman, should I respond to that?
Sorry, no, you don't have to respond to that. I said the point is noted.
Chairman.
Yes, sir, Honorable.
Chairman, I haven't been answered yet. The reason why I'm saying I haven't been answered, I asked him, he kept, in his presentation, he kept saying,
but he's still responding to certain questions. Some are follow-ups coming through of people who ask you questions, so I have to go back to that.
Okay.
So let's just allow you to finish.
Were you not sure with yourself? Why did you change partners? Why did you do the feasibility after the tender? Were you not involved in Charles Kwaza's suicide escapade? I was very sure of myself, which is why I made a decision to change to the Chinese, because the Chinese were 100 times bigger than the Germans. And after doing my research, I saw that Chint would be easier for Zimbabwe to do business with a Chinese company than it is to do with the European community because of the sanctions. So it was a bold decision that I made, and I wasn't doubting myself in any way. That's the reason. And I changed partners because I wanted to go in a lower price. Why did you do the feasibility after the tender? It was a tender document. It said feasibility, engineering, procurement and construction, and the funding. So I think that's a question ZPC could answer this, because this was a requirement that once you win the tender, you identify the land yourself. Go and look for the land yourself, then you do a feasibility. This was tender requirement. It was not my decision to say I will do the feasibility after winning. After being awarded, I did the feasibility. That was the tender document requirement.
Follow-up, Chairman. The follow-up is that were you a chancer or a briefcase businessman? Because you hadn't done this before, but you won the tender. You had never done it before, but you won the tender.
I think that question has been asked, he has answered it, and I think some of these questions are for the State Procurement Board, like I've said, to tell us the criteria that they use in giving tenders to people with business part.
And just to answer him as well, when you say briefcase businessman, it's a question of how you want to look at it.
I think I say that it is the State Procurement Board to ask the criteria that they use in booking. And I don't think you are a true businessman. I don't think you want to be really responsible unless you are a briefcase business litigation. Point of clarification.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I mentioned that on the tender document, he was supposed to look for the land before the land itself. So how much did you pay to Kwanda Town Council or Kwanda Law Council for the project?
Should I continue the question or should I answer that one first?
May you continue the question before we give it to you first and then we can answer that later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were you not involved in Charles Cause? I didn't know Mr. Charles Cause personally, and I was never involved in his personal life. I just knew him as the chairman of the State Procurement Board until his dismissal or resignation. May we know when you awarded the tender dates? I wouldn't have the exact dates, but I remember that we signed the contract on the 20th of October in 2015. And just to respond to your question, the land did not belong to Rwanda. The Minister of Lands is the one who gave us the land. We went to the Minister of the province in Mat South, who was Angelina Masuku then, and we told her that there's this project. Then she said, okay, there's land. We were given 225 hectares, a recommendation letter, which we then took to the Minister of Lands here in Harare, who then said, this is a national project and we're interested in power generation. Then they gave us an offer letter and said, this land here. So we didn't pay anything other than the normal $100 or $50 filing fee and this and this. It didn't cost us anything.
Follow up.
Yes, follow.
Honorable Chair, when they bought the 120 something hectares of land, was it 200?
225.
225 hectares of land. In whose name was that land allocated?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The tender said identify a piece of land. So as part of that requirement, it was Intratrek who had to say, we have found the land and it's here. So the land, the offer letter was in Intratrek Zimbabwe's name, but after signing the contract, we then handed over the land to ZPC in the interest of funding structures where the banks would be more interested in having ZPC own the land. So the minister withdrew the land and then handed it over to ZPC. But back then, it was in our name.
If you wanted to bring funding,
Mr. Chivhayo, who drew up your tender documents?
The tender documents were prepared by Chint Electric. They had a team of 30 engineers, 4 lawyers working on the tender documents. The tender documents came from China sealed. The Chinese are very skeptical and they don't trust anybody. So right till the tender day, they come holding their documents and you go and submit together. They won't even tell you the price. You give them a guideline and they submit. So the tender documents came sealed and signed from China. All we added was our certificate of incorporation, who were the directors, our tax clearance, just a few documents we added into the funding proposal. Everything else came sealed from China.
What would you say to the allegations that Mr. Kajanji is the one who did your tender documents?
Those allegations, with all due respect, are baseless and nonsensical.
Don't you think this is unnecessary language? It's made the parliament. We're not in Hollywood today, going to buy. I think you must respect the parliament and use the right language. You withdraw that and replace it with appropriate.
Second time. Rejected.
I apologize. I withdraw the statement. Those allegations are untrue. I wanted to put a lot of emphasis, but they are very wrong.
Honorable
thank you, Honorable Chair. I would like Mr. Chivhayo to clarify if Introtech has any relationship with a company called Terminal Engineers. And also to take you back a bit to say the offer letter for 225 hectares of land, is it still in Introtech's name or it is now in ZPC's name as we speak?
As we speak, the offer letter is now in ZPC's name, and Introtech has had a relationship with a company called Terminal Engineers, which Engineer Kajani owns, on the Gairezi tender. We participate in another tender with two companies from India, Bharat Heavy Equipment Limited and Angelique International. So because I'm very thorough, when they brought the tender documents, I said to them, can we have Terminal Engineers just to review that the presentation is impeccable?
I think I asked you, you must be honest, did Mr. Kajanji do your tender documents? You say no. And I think it would be good for you to say he did for this. Now you're saying it.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, we've been talking about the Gwanda solar specifically. This is Gairezi Hydro. So if you say which tender document, you're referring to Gwanda. So he had nothing to do with Gwanda. But if you ask about Gairezi, I'll tell you what input he put.
What I'm trying to say to you, what I'm trying to put across to you is at times don't withhold information. You'd rather just put it forward. I asked you a question. Do you know, Mr. Kajanji, any relationship? In this, he is not there, but in this, I work with the partners. Now it brings the question that you already have a relationship in doing this, and then it becomes the ZPC board chairperson. Do you see the link now? Whether you do not do this, you've had the relationship with him before, and then it becomes the ZPC chairperson. When you've hired him as a consultant or you've hired this company to work on a certain project for you. So now what we are now looking at is the link between you and him, which we now establish is very admitted. With that link, what would be his role of oversight, even as a ZPC chairperson, in working with you? Just from a moral point of view.
Yeah, obviously, Mr. Chairman, erroneous conclusions can be made, but as a board chairman, he has no influence whatsoever into any adjudication or any awards by State Procurement Board. He is there for issues relating to corporate governance and ZPC, and adjudication is all about the management and adjudication committees that are set, and State Procurement Board that reviews the evaluation. The board chairman has no direct influence whatsoever. And actually, it was a coincidence that when I had given him this Gairezi to review, I said, I'm not sure about this Indian companies, charge me just to see how the presentation was. And then the following week, he phoned me and said, I got a letter from the minister saying, I'm now the board chairman. Can I hand you over to someone else to assist you for any future work? And I said, yes. And that was it. And then that's when we cut ties.
Follow up. Just follow up, follow up, just to supplement. Thank you very much.
Honorable Chair, what I just needed the House maybe to clarify is the nature of the relationship between Edrotech and Terminal Engineers.
That's a very good question. What is the nature of the relationship between Terminal Engineers and Incitec?
Or maybe can you elaborate further? When you say the nature, what is it exactly?
Is it female husband or
What sort of relationship do you have?
As of now?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you for coming to my rescue. I just wanted him to unbundle, perhaps to make it, more illicit, to make it more, to bring it out, to say this is the kind of relationship that we had. Tell us more about your relationship with Terminal Engineers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was referred to Terminal Engineers by another company called No Consult, which was being headed by Mr. Isaac Mpotsa. So Mr. Isaac Mpotsa said, whenever you want your documents reviewed, we have a very senior engineer, very experienced, who can assist you right through the future. I am a bit more committed at No Consult and I can no longer be assisting you. So he then referred me to Engineer Kajanji in his individual capacity, and we had a meeting and I told him my vision and what I wanted, where I wanted the company to head.
When were you introduced?
Was it here or in Dubai?
We were introduced in Zimbabwe, it must have been in 2015, end of 2015 or beginning of 2015 or end of 2014. I'm not really sure, I can't remember.
It's very important.
Yeah.
It's very important to establish when you were introduced. You are talking about 2014, this tender.
The other tender was not awarded in 2015. It was awarded in and signed in 2016.
My question is very clear. Did you know Mr. Kajanji before you signed this tender? That's where the question is. 2014 would mean yes, you knew it.
Yes, something. Yeah, I might be losing a bit. I might be missing it there, but I think I knew him by the time I was awarded the solar tender. Yes.
Is it?
So you knew him before you were awarded the tender.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Chair. When given that he wrote to the Chief Secretary and Mr. Kawaza, it's bad to talk about a deceased in a late person in bed, he says. Does Mr. Chivhayo agree that Chivhayo. Does Mr. Chivhayo agree that the State Procurement Board, the resignation of Mr. Kawaza was due to fraudulent and maybe corrupt practices as a board member chair has said? Does he agree?
But he did respond to that. I think that was asked and it was responded to.
The whole delay for the project was because of Mr. Kawaza. If there was anyone that I hated the most who delayed the project the worst, it was Mr. Kawaza.
I think let's
May his soul rest in peace.
I think we now need to unbundle that relationship. Yourself and
Thank you, sir. Not at all. I formed this company with my partner, my own accord, and with our own vision. There was no influence whatsoever from Engineer Kajanji. ideally you cannot then say an award because it's not him who awards.
But with all the presentations that you have done so far, Mr. Chivhayo, and all the reports that you see, and with the influence that you had access to the Chief Secretary, and the easy part of getting the response when people take 2-3 years to get a response, don't you think you had much more influence and experience to deal with in terms of working on the shelf company?
And you say that Mr. was delaying the project. Well, why do you say so? If no government is very slow, and it was part of doing his job, why would you rush to say he was slowing down the whole process?
And secondly, Mr. Chairman, that he hated him. A deceased, you will never say you hate somebody who's late. He has got families and they are listening to that he hated is uncultural according to Zimbabwe's laws.
And it's so
He's dead. I think you withdrew that. You don't withdraw with it. It's total uncultural. I think can you continue to unban?
Okay, my apologies, Chairman. For us as business people, when you wait 1 year or you wait for 2 years, and then you look at the power shortages, actually you have every reason to feel that there's delay in whatever processes that are going through. So in our view, there were a lot of delays because normally they would award tenders in a shorter space of time, in 4 months and 6 months, but this kept on dragging on and on and on for years. So this is actually what we thought.
But Mr. Cross is not here, so we're not really asking. What about if he was trying to avoid the undue processes, the influence of the people that he's spoken to? He wanted it to be fair. We'll never know. Let's also appreciate that we don't want to talk about it. We cannot come here and answer to some of these issues. So I think it's best we probably avoid mentioning it in terms of the response is needed. I think that would be the fairest way of handling that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I got introduced to Engineer Kajandi by Mr. Isaac Mkota. And he said, should you have any projects that you want reviewed or any engineering support, I have an engineer that has a lot of experience that can assist you as and when you need it. Because I won't be able to assist you in the future because I'm now more committed as non-consult and I won't be able. So that's how I was introduced to him. When I was introduced to him, I told him I was participating in the guy raising tender with Barata Heavy Equipment Limited and Angelique International. And once the tender documents come before we submit, I would need him just to review and see that the technical specifications are correct and give me an opinion before we submit. And ideally, when the documents came from India, I asked him to say how much will you charge me for reviewing the documents before I submit. And he gave me his company's price to review the documents. And he reviewed them, gave me his comments, and we paid him, and that was it. That is basically the only transaction we ever had with him.
What was important was to just understand the relationship that you had, and it is to your response that you did have a relationship. Yes. So I think that's what we wanted to establish. I think members, if we can move to the part of the payments now, I think we've exhausted this stuff. We want to go about the payments. The other issue is if you could